Hello, humans of the world. You are now tuned into Relayshons Podcast, where me and a new co-host just like you discuss our relations with ourselves, with each other, and our experiences. Are we ready to break the cycles? You know, the ones that live within our learned behaviors. Have you noticed the decisions you make subconsciously? The ones that lead you right back to where you started? Let's take on the healing journey together. Get on this PJ of unconventional conversations and let's travel all the way through our lineage. Then let's break the cycles link by link. Ready? Let's do this. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Relayshons. Hello, humans of the world. We are here again for another amazing episode. And, this one is important to me. It's personal. It's going to be informative and a bit of a breakthrough in our society. So I'm excited. The episode today is called Brown Skin, and the premise is to discuss colorism in the LatinX community. So it's very specific. And I'm here for another threesome. Yes, you know how I like threesomes. So I'm here with two beautiful, gorgeous women who are so powerful and so together and so knowledgeable and so confident. So I'm so happy for you guys to meet them and get to know them a little bit better. So say hello to Jessica and Emily.
Hi, guys.
So I always start my topic with how we met. So it's two completely different stories here. So I'll let you lead it. Go ahead, Jessica.
So I met Melissa through her sister, Joanna. How many years has it been now that I've known you?
A lot.
More than a handful of years now.
Yes.
But yeah, I've met through her sister. Now we're sister friends.
Yes, we're sister friends. And Emily?
For me, I used to date her fine brother.
Oh gosh.
And now we're like family.
Yes. So it's like family, which is going to make this conversation even better. And you're going to see our amazing Colombia pictures because we just came back from Colombia and we're looking hot. Okay. So I'll share some of those when I release this episode as well so you guys can see. So let's get right into it. So can we speak about colorism in the Latinx community and how it affects our experiences? Disclaimer. This conversation is not meant to divide us. The intention is to bring awareness and direct the energy towards accountability and understanding. So I want to get that out there. Next, our differences are used to divide us. And maybe the reason for this is the things that differ in our very eclectic community changes our experiences. In most cases, the obvious physical differences like the color of our skin, the textures of our hair, the widths of our nose, and the density of our lips. The experience within our own people are overshadowed, hidden, and because it's uncomfortable, we choose to pretend they don't exist. But that ends right now. And we're going to talk about it. So let's do it. So let's start. Okay, the way we are treated in society drives our experiences. Would you guys agree with that?
I don't necessarily agree with that. And I think for me personally, I disagree because experiences definitely influence you, but it's a lot about how you react to it. So I don't 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, so can you give an example? Like, something happens in your environment and then you react to it and then it changes the experience, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. But it's up to me to determine how it does or does not change. So you can let it roll off your shoulders, or you can address it. But I tend to operate in a way where I try not to let it change me or how I move forward by accepting it.
That's a good perspective. I didn't even think about it like that. That's good. What about you, Emily?
I think I would agree with that. I think it affects me sometimes. I try not to let it, but sometimes you just can't help it.
Yeah. At least for me, I would say I see it a lot more at work. Mm-hmm. So for instance, just being like the only person of color at work, I'm treated or expected to do things a little bit more I work a lot harder, or I have to prove myself more than most of my counterparts, just because of the way that I look, or not even just my skin, but the fact that I'm a woman. And so, and both together, it doesn't even adds up to even more of a happenstance of that. So I think that for the most part plays a part. I think the second piece, which relates to the topic, is as a woman of color who's Latina, is assumed that I'm just Black, right? Even from my own community. And so my experiences, I would say, like, one of the interesting one is like getting in an elevator with a lot of Spanish people, and they'll start talking in Spanish. And it has happened where they like start talking about my hair, or like going back and forth about something about me, presuming that I wouldn't understand. And then I have to have that uncomfortable moment when I have to turn around and say something in Spanish to let them know that I understood what they said. And I think from a young age, experiencing that taught me that, wait a second, the way that I look is really sending a message out there. And no matter who I am in my house, or how much Spanish I speak, or how much Mark Anthony we listen to, at the end of the day, I go out there and I am perceived to be X, even from my own people. So that's where I kind of wanted to kind of get towards when it came to this question.
Well, I do think part of that question, and I do acknowledge that part of my answer is different because I am a white Latina. So personally, do things change how I move forward? No, not per se, but I also don't go through the same things that you do. So I think my answer is different, partially because of appearance.
Right, exactly.
100%.
So that's perfect. So this leads us to the next question. At first glance, what do people presume your race is?
So it depends on who I'm in a room full of. It changes. So I work in corporate America, where I am the minority is the minority. So at work, I'm 100% assumed to be Latina. They know I'm Latina, point blank, period. In a room full of minorities, it's questionable whether I'm Latina or I'm white. So it definitely changes depending on who I'm in a room.
How about you, Emily?
For me, I've gotten a bunch of crazy things except Latina. They'll say, are you Ethiopian? Are you Indian even, when I had straight hair? Sometimes, are you Honduran? And
yeah, same here. So I had a funny story. I was on the bus in Oakland randomly, and because I was living there, and this guy, the man, comes and sits next to me. He just starts talking in another language, like a lot, and I was just like, oh, I don't know what you're saying. And after I let him like express himself, I was like, I'm sorry, sir, I don't know what you're saying. And then he's like, oh no, you look just like my sister. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, you're not my people? And I was like, I don't know, maybe. I don't. And then he's like, yeah, I'm Ethiopian. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, you look just like my sister. You look like my family. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe somewhere down the line, somewhere. And I've gotten Egyptian. I've gotten half Black, half white. Everything you could think of except what I am, or part of what I am, right? And I guess that's the part in our lineage that's mixed and makes it a little bit more eclectic. So what race do you identify with, per se? Emily, you lead.
I used to say Afro-Latina, but now I'm gearing more towards Black Latina, because I'm seeing the Afro-Latina movement completely different now.
Oh, we're going to get into that in a second. Okay. Jessica?
So I think there's also a conversation of ethnicity and race and how the two are sort of different. So I always think of like the question on paper when you're in school and they ask you like, what's your race?
Right, it's only 5 things.
There's 5 things, and there's never a category. There's never Latino. So I think growing up, I don't remember what I would check off, but definitely now I check off the African American box or African box. So ethnicity wise, I'm Latina, I'm Puerto Rican Dominican, but when you're talking about what race, I definitely identify with being African because of my roots. So I'm Dominican, like it's in me, it's there.
And you recognize it and you identify with it.
100%. A lot more nowadays than I think I was naive to it then, but now, yeah.
You got it. So it's funny. That's actually a nice little icebreaker question. What box do you check on those things? I always checked other, and like I always did it angrily. I was like, "You guys don't have a box for me, and you're not gonna make one." Just because I'm a rebel. But I always identify myself as Black first, because that's what I felt like the world treated me to be, and that's how I was identified in the world. And then secondly, Hispanic, of course. But I do, up until maybe my late 20s, I had a very grudgeful expression or I would say feeling towards my own culture. And so I didn't even want to be identified as Latina. I was just like, whatever, you guys don't want me there, so I don't want to be there. Because I was always shunned by the Dominican culture, I felt more. And so I always went with Black first. Okay, so Emily, let's touch a little bit more on the Afro-Latina phrase, culture. What does that mean to you, or what is it really? Like, if you were to give it a definition, what would you say it is?
Afro-Latina, I would say, is embracing your Blackness as a Latina. But it has become a movement at this point, an empowerment movement. But it's still leaving Black Latinas out. It's a movement that was created to include Black Latinas, and we're still not included. We're included, but not really. We're in the back burner. So that's why I'm kind of distancing myself from the term.
So what are your struggles with being unidentifiable in that culture or in that phrase? I'll have you lead, Jessica.
So it's again, it's different for me because I'm fair skin, I'm white, so I don't necessarily feel unidentifiable, because in a room of white people, they see me, they know I'm Latina. In a room of minorities, there's some question, but it's not. I am seldom to not be thought of as Latina right away. So I don't feel the same as you guys might in terms of not feeling like included. Yeah.
But I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say that I ever looked at you and thought you were a white woman. You don't look like a white woman to me.
Right, as a fellow Latina.
Right.
So I think as a fellow Latina, there has been plenty of people who see the Latina in me, but like other Caribbean people might not, other island people don't see that in me. You know, it takes one to know one.
Right, exactly.
So they get it, but not everyone. But I don't feel like I've had the same experiences, Emily might have, in terms of being unidentifiable.
I would say for me, when I first heard the Afro-Latina phrase, I thought it was specific to hair texture.
I see.
Like an actual afro. I never really thought about it to be based on skin. And so, and I think even now, just thinking about all of the people that are marketing and all of that, they're specifically marketing it to hair products, hair things, right? And then it's like now starting to expand to like people, but it kind of just stays focused on like the hair part of it. It doesn't really expand further. So I think it's limiting. I think it's a limiting phrase. Okay, so is there a light skin privilege? Like, let's just get right deep into it. Do you believe there is a light skin privilege?
100%. Yes, I can see it. I can say I've experienced it. I think that's why a lot of my answers are polar opposite from Emily or you, because it exists. And it is very real.
And what about you, Emily?
Definitely. That's why I feel so strongly about the Afro-Latina movement now, because I kind of feel like it was hijacked. It's great that everyone is identifying their Blackness, even if you're fair-skinned, but it still leaves us unrepresented. And it's not about, I don't mean to sound like I want to create division. I just want acknowledgement that my struggle and Jessica's is not the same, and it'll never be.
Right.
Right.
People think of me as a Black woman, and I'm fighting two different struggles: Latina, as a Latina woman, and as a Black woman.
That is true. That is true. So we were all just in Colombia together, which was an amazing vacation.
Yeah,
So I want to touch on a little bit on the experience there, and I'll lead it. I would say Colombia is the first Latin American country that I've been to, including from my own, where I was literally glorified for the color of my skin. And I would say that's never happened to me before, especially in Latin America. Maybe in Africa, I would be more glorified for my color, but definitely not in any Latin American country, not even in America. So let's talk a little bit about that. Jessica, I'll let you lead it. How was being the fair-skinned one in the group?
Yeah.
How was your experience in that?
So it's funny because that was something I picked up immediately. The sort of polar opposite experience that you had, and that was the first Latin country you've been to where you had that, because it was the first Latin country that I've been to where I had that experience as well on the opposite end of the spectrum. So I immediately picked up on the fact that I was the only light-skinned one of the group, and how I definitely was not noticed or given the attention nearly in the slightest way as my tribal buddies. So it was super interesting because I'm not, it's like I'd never seen that before, but also like it gave perspective. You know what I mean? And it's weird even saying that, but it definitely, like, I kept saying that I felt like I was in the Matrix because it was just like an opposite experience. Yeah. But I definitely picked up on it right away.
And it's crazy because until we spoke about it, I don't think I noticed it.
You did not, because it was like day 3 and I brought it up.
Right.
And you were like, you know what? Yeah, and I was like, literally off the plane. I was like, oh, off the plane. Like, getting the cabs, picked up on it right away. Getting the cabs, like, that's how soon I was like, this is different.
Wow. Yeah. So interestingly enough, and initially I didn't notice it, obviously, because I was just so enamored. I'll be honest. I was enamored and I was like, wow, I'm royalty. Finally, somebody gets it.
Absolutely.
That I didn't notice that there was a divide. Yeah. And then when you expressed it and I started paying attention to it, I'm like, it wasn't even just that it was like you were overlooked. It was almost like you were being disrespected. Yeah. Like you were almost like you disappeared. It's almost like they didn't even want to look at you. They didn't want to acknowledge you. And like that made me feel some type of way because it was just like, wait a second. Like, okay, I understand that you may not be favorable to the way that she or her skin color is or the way that she looks, but gosh, are we going to just pretend she doesn't exist? And then it just made me start thinking like, okay, well, is that how I usually feel? You know, gosh, yeah, whenever I am with my light-skinned friends and I'm hanging out and I'm the only one, I usually disappear. Yeah. And I've had even experiences. I remember one time I was in a club and I was with all of my Latina friends and they were all favorable skin, light-skinned or olive tone. And this Spanish guy, we're in a Spanish club. Spanish guy came and asked my friend to dance. And she's like, oh, no, I don't want to dance with her. She wants to dance to me. And he's like, oh, no, I don't like black girls. I don't dance with black girls. And I was just like, oh, I mean, she just said to dance. Like, you don't have to marry me or anything, right? And I'm like, well, his loss. Like, I'm the one that dances better than all of these girls. But I think it just made me like, in that moment, I just started popping up all the times that I felt what you felt in that moment. And it was just like, wow, like ignored, really, you know? What was your thoughts about it, Emily?
I did notice.
Initially before she said something or after?
I noticed before she said something, but I didn't say anything because I was like, am I tripping? I wasn't 100% sure, but yeah, I definitely noticed.
And what do you think about it?
Oh, a little good.
But don't feel guilty for feeling good.
A little guilty just because I don't want her to feel what we feel as my friend. But it was like, oh my God, finally, we're heard, we're seen, we're here.
We're here. We definitely arrived in Colombia. That is for sure. Yeah, it was definitely once you brought it to my attention, it definitely felt like indifferent about it because it was like, wait a second, she wants ice cream too. Can she order her ice cream? Like, gosh.
That was the incident where I was like, this is like, that was the incident that like definitely was like, this is not okay. Like, I understand the not getting the attention, the not getting, treated as glamorously, totally fine. But that was the one incident where I melted into the floor. That was the one moment where I felt completely uncomfortable because of how I was treated. Because there was no denying it was because of what I looked like.
Yeah.
But then a part of me also felt guilty for feeling that way because that's a struggle that tons of people deal with every day. I was dealing with it for a week. You know what I mean? And it's not something that life-skin privilege. It's not something that I don't encounter that.
Right.
Often. Ever. And then I got there and even so that was the one incident, that was one incident. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like the whole trip I was being disrespected or, would I go back 100%? But that one incident, I was like, how can I feel bad for this one thing when people literally deal with this every single day? So I felt bad for feeling bad for myself.
Oh, it's like double guilt.
Yeah, 100%. So like, you felt bad for like being like, this fucking like, I felt bad for being like, I can't believe I'm being treated this way because of the color of my skin. ... Like, it felt bad.
Right. Yeah. And I initially when I saw it so blatantly, I was like, no, she wants to order ice cream. Come on, guys. So just a little backstory. When we went into a gelato place in Colombia at night, and we just wanted some ice cream after dinner, and the guy, it was me and Jessica on one side, and then Emily, and Jessica walked in first. Emily and my sister were like kind of in the back and on the other side, and he came and took my order, and then he skipped Jessica and just went to Emily and my sister, and I was like, wait, like, she wants to order too, and he like almost didn't want to wait on her, and he was, disclaimer, he was olive tone.
Absolutely.
He wasn't like a dark-skinned man, which again, we weren't just treated good by dark-skinned people, we were treated good by all people. So that was definitely an experience. So how can light-skinned people in the Black community accept accountability to the differences in the treatment? How can we be in that space, right? Because that was you finally in that experience. Yeah. Not someone telling you about it. Yeah. Not some, like, you were, it's not often that you can switch the shoe on the other foot, right? Yeah. So how would you say that light-skinned people can take more accountability for?
First admitting it goes a long way. We have to acknowledge that it does exist, but also call people out on their shit. You can't, you call a spade, and I do think it's up to us to make that change. Like, you can't enable it, no matter how uncomfortable it is. You can't continue to let people do it just because they are who they are. I have people in my family that definitely have colorism issues, and I think it's important to call them out on it and respectfully do it, because you can, and just stop the conversation from going forward. Like, you can't keep allowing the space for this to happen, but acknowledge that it exists, because it does.
How about you, Emily?
I agree. These conversations are important, and all the little jokes that we grew up around, those need to end.
Can you tell me one joke that you would use as an example?
Or not necessarily jokes, but little things that as a Black Latina, you less like, oh, you're pretty for a Black girl. Right. Or the hair thing, relaxing, or let's see what kind of hair the baby's going to have when someone has a baby, or little things like that. And we hear our family say it all the time, and we just kind of like, whatever. Yeah. But no, we have to address it. We have to say it's not okay. It's not funny. It's not innocent. It messes with your confidence when you're growing up. And then as a you just become self-conscious.
Yeah, we're basically building insecurities around something that's natural, because one thing is worse or bad and the other one is better. Yeah. That's good. I would say, even from, I I would say I have held people accountable. Like my mom, obviously, I also have the same issue, although my mom is actually even darker than I was, or she was darker than I was. She was very like, say the same type of things, like the color, this, and making things prettier and all of this. And it's like, well, what do you say about yourself? And when your mom is saying something like this, then it's like, oh, well, if she thinks like this and this is how she looks, then how should I think about myself, right? You start to relate it back to you. Yeah. And then growing up, most of my friends were light-skinned. So I had a lot of light-skinned Latina girls, and they would say things like, there's one thing that has like ingrained in my experience for some reason, but it was a friend of mine who was like, oh yeah, because the prettier girls and the prettier Dominicans come from the town I come from. And like, I don't know, that just stuck to me. Like, then she looked at me and it was just like, oh, like, why? Because people that come from where I come from in the same islands are uglier. Why? Because they're darker, and I didn't call her out. I didn't say anything. I just remember like internalizing that, and it stuck with me even still to this. I mean, that happened years ago, and it like stuck with me. And I was just like, gosh, like this is my friend. And my friend is telling me that I'm not pretty. Like she thinks I'm ugly. Like she knows I'm not ugly, right? And it was just these questions, right? And I just didn't know how to address it. I didn't know what to say about it. I think I might have said a slick remark because I've always been slick with my mouth. So I think I probably just said something like, who told you that? Or something like that. Like, who fed that to you? Or something slick. But I still left with it. She left me with it. And it's like, wait, that's not my story. That's not my reality. So we got to be careful what we say to each other and how we identify things, because some things stick to people and it just stays for a long, long time, and it builds into insecurities that shouldn't.
And to bitterness.
Yeah, for no reason. Like, we're just different, and it's okay to be different. Yeah. So are you pressured to choose a side? And a side meaning there's only two sides, either a black or a white side, period.
So here's the thing, like I personally don't feel pressure to choose a side because I feel firm in which side I belong to. I just know that there are people in my family who don't agree with it. But I stand firm in the side that I'm picking. And it's the opposite side that they pick. So I don't feel pressure because I'm confident in where I stand on that, but I do know that it is opposing what other people
Have you ever felt pressured before?
I think growing up I might have felt pressured, but that's just because I figuring yourself out. And you mentioned you grew up and you were around a lot of fair-skinned people. Mm-hmm. So I grew up on the opposite side of that because I grew up when I was like the one fair-skinned girl of a group of usually black people. So I think in terms of like fitting in, I felt pressured to choose a side, but I think with age I just gained the confidence to put myself where I feel like I belong and just own that, period. Regardless of who thinks about it. Even
Good for you. Good for you. Emily?
Well, there's not much of a choice for me. If it's either black or white. Black.
Okay, so let's say, black or Spanish.
I would still say black because I just feel so much rejection from Latinos, specifically Dominicans, which is crazy because my whole family is Dominican. Mm-hmm. So I usually just say black. Or black Latina, or black women that speak Spanish. Yeah.
I agree with that, relate to that as well. I think that growing up and even now, I just don't feel acceptance from most of the questions and the badgerment I get is from the Spanish community. And the only like bashing that I got from black people was like, oh, your hair is too X, so you must not be all the way black. Or you're black, but you're not really black. Or what are you mixed with? Like, that was like the biggest question I got. And it's like, bro, look at me. I'm black. It doesn't matter how long my hair gets or whatever. At the end of the day, I'm a black woman. So just cut it out, right? But there was a time that I felt in between. And I felt like I had to choose. Like, I would have my black friends and then I would have my Spanish friends. And they were intermixed through me sometimes, but there was still a difference, and like the associations and this like almost like, well, oh, you're not listening to enough Spanish music, or you're listening to too much hip hop, or oh wow, you're listening to that type of music. Oh, I didn't even know you listened to that. or like it was always the little underlying comments that made you feel like, wait, I can't do both.
Yeah.
Like, why? I could do both. I listen to Mark Anthony and DMX is my boo. What is the problem? I love Mark and I love DMX. Why not? So that's definitely a big one.
I think adding on to that, for me, I never really felt in between because I still never really felt like I belonged in neither. The Black group didn't accept me. The Latina group didn't accept me. It's like I always say, too black to be Spanish, too Spanish to be black.
Right.
Because it was always like, oh, the way you say chair or your accent with my Black friends. And then with my Spanish friends, it was like, you know, the typical, the hair, the color. Why do you like hanging out with them? So it was like, yeah, I just didn't really belong. So I was just always in my own lane by myself.
Right. And that's where the point I was trying to get to, like this in-between phase that I think that it goes unidentified, is a group of people who are not quite one or not quite the other. And I mean, I guess I would presume, I don't know, but I would presume people that are half Black and half white probably have the same battle, because it's like, wait, if your mom is one thing and your dad is another, like, how do you choose? And they're completely polar opposites. Right. So how do you, identify with it? So in this in-between, I guess, how do we understand what we're doing to each other in this in-between stages, or people that are in this in-between stages in social media? Or like how is the pressure being to choose? Have you guys seen it at all? Noticed it?
I mean, I don't know if there's still a pressure to choose. I guess in some ways there are with movements, but in other ways there's about now. I would like to think that there's more about inclusivity. So it's about making everyone all together. And of course that we are like a long way from that, 100%. But
there's more initiatives now than ever.
Right, which is my
thinking. I'm sorry.
So do you see pressure in social media towards people having to feel like they have to choose?
Yeah. As someone who wants to be an influencer, I often question, where do I fit in? Like, who's going to follow me? The Black girls or the Latina girls? Because when I look at Afro-Latinas now, in the movement, this whole social media movement, I still don't see me there. I see girls that look more like J-Lo, the J-Lo type.
Right.
The looser hair pattern, lighter skin. And yeah, I once saw a video of a Black Latina on YouTube, and she did a Latina tag, which it was questions about, Latina culture. And everyone in her comments starting attacking her about her saying she was Latina. They were saying she had to say she was Afro-Latina because she was Black. And she made a second video saying, I don't understand, if you're looking at me, you can see that I'm Black. Why do I have to say that I am Afro-Latina? So,
yeah, I don't know if you guys ended up seeing that interview with Amara La Negra on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne and, MB. And she was talking about this specific issue. And I think that they were just confused. They were like, what do you mean? Like, what is the problem? What are you being pressured for? Just be whatever you want. It's like, no, but I'm put in this position to feel like I have to choose something. Yeah. And that one is not more than the other, or what's my percentage in each hand. I definitely don't feel the pressure directly, but I definitely see it out there of like, you need to be identified. And if I can identify you to be in a specific box, whatever that box is, then you're kind of like, we're unsure. And when you're unsure, confusion builds almost like, it's like, if I'm confused by you, I just rather not even look. Right. Which is just sucky. But I hope that we start growing out. And I think maybe we need a new category. Although we could just because the spectrum is so wide, so we're just going to build categories on top of categories. But I think we need an in-between category for people who are Latina and in between Latina and Black, and then people who are in between Black and white, because I think there is a niche there and we need to be seen and heard of and identified properly. And I know there's a lot of us. So don't ever feel like you can't be an influencer and you're not going to have your following, because you will. There's going to be people who identify with you, because where there is one, there is many.
Right, that's true.
So never question that, girl. What does the idea of pretty babies come from? Just to shift gears a little bit. This idea when people say, yeah, because I want to have a baby with this person that looks like this, or the light eyes, or the lighter skin, or the finer hair, because I want my babies to be prettier. What do you guys say about that?
That's total BS, of course. And as far as for me and my family, I try to make it known that I'm not going to put up with that. Like, I don't have kids, but I have a niece. And there's no good hair, bad hair. Hair is just hair, whether straight, curly, it's hair. Who said that hair is bad? It's crazy to me.
Yeah. There's a
what
whole
hair killed someone?
The hair is a murderer.
So that, and it's like, it starts with us, with our family. We have to start with our family for it to expand out to the world.
I agree. I know that there's been a concept of what a pretty baby is, and there's definitely been people who think they want to be selective about their partner to ensure of this pretty baby. But I think a healthy baby is a pretty baby. That's all you need, a healthy baby.
If you are thinking about seeking somebody to have a pretty baby, then what that sounds to me is that you don't feel like you're pretty. Right. And that's a self-hate. That's like something within yourself. And now, because we're in this new world of dynamic that being Black is cool, before, the idea of having a pretty baby was having a lighter baby with the light eyes and all of this. Now, the Kim Kardashians of the world, having a pretty baby is having a Black baby.
But a mixed Black baby.
A mixed, right. Because a lot of the times the melanin doesn't stick as much as it should, or maybe as much as they would like to. So what do you say for, like, a light-skinned mother with a Black baby, or a mother that doesn't identify with the Black experience, raising a child who is in between and doesn't have an identity in this world? That's a deep one, right?
It is.
Yeah. Because then again, you don't want to perpetuate the stigma of having them pick a side. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to make them feel like they have to belong to one or the other. Because the notion is that you want to break that. You want to make
right, but they're gonna feel in between.
Right.
There's not a category for them, so they're gonna feel like, who am I? Right? Like, who am I in this world? We don't have one. We're unidentified. So
is teaching them individually of both enough? I don't know.
Yeah. We don't have the answers, but that's a thought-provoking one.
As a parent, if you're white or Black and you're getting your spouse is the opposite, it's your responsibility as a parent to make sure that your child embraces both. And white moms, learn how to do your kids' hair. It's important. It really is.
Yeah,
it's important.
Just educating yourself about the products and the things that are out there, so that you don't have your kid not feeling like they're, because they don't have mommy's hair, that they don't know what to do, or feel like they don't connect with it. Yeah, I do agree with that. That's a good one. Okay, so how are we breaking the cycles and healing our lineage in the process of colorism within our own community?
Being unapologetic. I am who I am. Mm-hmm. You don't have to like it, but you're going to respect it.
Boom.
Personally, it's about, again, addressing it, stopping the conversation, and changing the dialogue going forward. I mentioned I have family that definitely struggles with colorism, particularly my Dominican side. And conversations that come up at the dinner table before about colorism in front of the younger generation of kids. And they would step away from the table, and at that moment I would turn over to said family member and say, we're not going to talk about this in front of them, not in that tone. We're not going to feed them that and teach them that this is what it is. It's your opinion, but understand that you are influencing them, and the dialogue has to change. And I think that was the first time I because I also heard the conversation come up plenty and was, dubious to say something, but I did in that moment. And I'm glad that I did, because that person received it and was like, okay. And that's how I knew this was a moment and that change can happen. The fact that they weren't like, you can't tell me what to say, or I'm going to say it anyway. The fact that they heard me, address it, and respected me enough to say, okay.
That's dope.
So yeah, like, address it. Just because we know it's wrong and we know better, if we do not say something, that is not fixing the situation.
Yeah.
Hear it, stop it, address it, change the dialogue going forward.
I don't struggle with doing that process that you just outlined in my regular life, but I do in my corporate life.
Right.
And I'm trying to find the happy medium of how do you address it when your bills need to get paid? How do you address it when you're the only one in the room? How do you address it when it's directed at you very blatantly? And the intention may not be negative, but it's like blatant. So it's like, oh my God, like you're like a red sign in my face that's shining. What do I do? And the last couple of times that it has happened, I've walked away from it. But I always felt disappointed that I did.
Yeah.
And so I would say, just try to find some type of level, at least for me, the cycle I'm trying to break is trying to find some type of happy medium of like speaking up for myself without being offensive or coming off defensive either. I just want to be able to be informative.
Right.
And how could I do that without much emotions when my emotions are there? Which is why I think I walk away, because I'm just like, okay, now I'm getting too emotional about this. Yeah. So let me just step away because I don't know how to say it. So I need to like know how to tone down my emotion and still be informative and use it as a teachable moment.
Right. Teachable
moment. Boom. But thank you, ladies. This is good. This is not, it felt heavier in the beginning than it really was, right? So thank you, everyone, for listening. This is a good one. I hope that you share. I hope that you got something from it. If you can identify with it, please share it with somebody who may. I think that this is going to be the beginning of something really, really beautiful, which is just coming to levels of accountability and us just being able to be, more knowledgeable. So thank you for listening. Until next time, later. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to subscribe and follow on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube at Relayshons Podcast via Thediaryofmr. M as in Melissa, R as in Rosario. And now, the best part, here are the after credits, a message from my co-host.
As uncomfortable as the conversation might be about colorism in the Latinx community, I think it's important that we address it, definitely to our past generations, but that we address it with the current generation and that we set the tone for the future generations so that going forward the conversation is changed so that ultimately it can and hopefully will end.
Be the change that you want to see. Speak up, stand up. In order for inclusion to happen, awareness comes first. We need to continue to have these conversations until minorities, specifically Black and Latinos, realize we are all one. If we come together and love and accept all our differences, we will become one. And when that happens, we will be stronger and we will be able to break more barriers to ultimately end racism altogether, so future generations won't have to deal with it.